Sumo is a web app that the Mozilla Foundation made for their support pages. It is like a combination wiki, forums, and document management. And we're evaluating it as a possible replacement for help.ubuntu.com/community. The major reason we're looking at this is because of the built-in translation support that it provides us. I apologize, I had it working on my laptop and then had to do a reinstall this week and don't have it set up anymore. Yes. But Ben, you've used it, right?
Yeah, it's nice. I think it's a lot slicker than Moin. Some of the stuff we use. It's got a lot of development going on right now in the Mozilla community. A lot of different modules are going to be added into it, apparently in the roadmap. So I definitely think it will be easier for some people to contribute to community documentation on this new platform versus what we're working with right now.
There are some things we would have to change to better integrate with the rest of our ecosystem. So we'd want to get it to use login.ubuntu.com. There are some, like it has built-in karma tracking, which we would maybe want to.
And I think they're also adding badge support, so we'd either have to decide whether we want to support that or not. So open badges. It uses.
So once we have a Django user, the rest of it should not care where that person came from. So we should be able to just switch out their user registration with a Django open.
An example of what the forums discussion thing looks like?
Yeah, can you pull up one?
Yeah. I'm not loving the idea of another web-based support forum to support because we already have.
So the forum, the discussion, there's two parts. There's a regular forum, which we would not want, and then there's discussion threads on the articles themselves, which we do want.
So.
That sounds good.
And yes, those are separate in the code, so it would be easy enough to use one but not the other.
So it's two questions. How would it fit in with the existing forums? I know you say you're not going to use that. AskUbuntu.com, which we already have. And then I'll let you answer that, then I have one other question.
So when we do the retheming, we would add links to the resources that we already have that we want to point to. I think somewhere on here there's like a link to their forums, and we would just redirect that to point to our forums. We would add links for Ask Ubuntu.
Yeah, so like it would start out right here. It's kind of like you'd ask a question, and then it's going to ask you for like a Mozilla browser ID, and to go from there.
Okay.
So to start opening a new question, it's kind of almost support ticket based versus discussion, but the community can see it depending on what kind of question it is.
The question eventually ends up becoming part of the documentation.
Yeah.
All right.
It allows it to evolve.
Yeah.
So it's kind of asking a question the way you can on Launchpad answers.
Yeah, similar to that. Yes.
And then the other question I had is, because I don't know how you edit, like help.ubuntu.com/community, you can go ahead and make a tutorial on how to do something. Is that still going to be the aim here, that somebody would be able to come in and write a tutorial on, like, this is how you install Cacti and get it to work in your environment?
There's some amount of like editor control, so people can submit articles, and there's groups that approve them before they go live. Specifically, that's used for like the language translations. So each language team would be in charge of making sure that translations submitted for their language are correct and approving them when they are.
But the base article, would it require approval, or?
Does the base article require approval, Ben? I'm not sure on that.
Not totally sure.
I mean, right now, the wiki doesn't have that at all, obviously.
Right.
And then the other question, Because I mean, we ask people that are looking to become Ubuntu members to go make a wiki page for themselves, and obviously that's still going to be wiki.ubuntu.com.
Yeah, we're not doing anything to replace wiki.ubuntu.com.
So, how different is the editing on this? Is this what you see is what you get editor, or is there still markup
I believe they
language?
have one, yeah, if I remember right. It's a different markup. It's not Moin, it's MediaWiki, but I'm almost positive that they provided like a FCK editor or one of those.
And is there any concern then that we're going to be asking people to learn one set of markup on Moin and then another set of markup for this?
Not on this because of the WYSIWYG on there, so they're not really having to learn markup.
All right. I mean, from what you're describing here, it almost seems like the official help.ubuntu.com, not /community, might be a better fit for this than the community document.
Yeah, because the help.ubuntu.com is docs straight from Ubuntu.
So you're talking about how the possibility of hacking it so that it can use a different forum. So for instance, like for some of the Mozilla products, they use the built-in forum system, but for Thunderbird, for instance, they're still using Sumo, but they have it go to Get Satisfaction because their team uses Get Satisfaction for support.
Okay.
So there's the possibility definitely to have it redirect where you want it to.
I mean, going back to what Charles was saying, I think it would make sense actually to have the current help.ubuntu.com redirect to Sumo, because that would be a much better front end for people to go to. It doesn't matter that we would be getting rid of the static docs. We could have like help.ubuntu.com /docs or whatever. I don't know, but I think it might be interesting to consider having this as the front end to help.ubuntu.com.
Yep.
If you look at the URL, you can see that they all start with like the language code.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's really kind of baked in from the beginning.
I mean, one of the things that I see as we look at a new thing is we just right now have a lot of resources for people to go get help.
Mm-hmm.
And other than links, it doesn't seem like a lot of things tie them together. You know, like one of the things that I know AskUbuntu.com has is sometimes you get somebody that asks a question and it really ends up not being a question, it ends up being a bug. And there's no way to get that information other than manual process to going into a bug report.
Mm-hmm.
AskUbuntu.com also has a problem where it's not really here's a set answer, it's more of a bunch of opinions and it's more of an ongoing discussion, which really belongs more in a forum kind of thing.
So this is kind of like how the conversation thing works on Sumo. You start a question, and then people can reply to it, and it will notify the moderators of Sumo.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, doc team or wiki administrators. So I thought you were.
No. I was trying to get a Sumo instance
Is
running.
this a separate article, or is this a comment on an article?
It attaches it, so it creates a relationship to an article. If an article exists, if there is an article, then it will start the evolution to become an article. So it will create like a ticket, and then eventually, if it's a real question and a valid answer is provided, then it can turn into a support article to support that, and it becomes an actual article within Sumo.
I did not hear whether we want to have this applied to the official documentation as well as the community documentation.
I think for right now, I was just targeting the community documentation. If we wanted to roll the official documentation in there later, we can support all of their use cases, and we'll do that.
I think it would be too difficult to just have it linked somewhere, like statically.
Yeah, we can link to wherever it's.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Charles.
Charles, you mentioned that now you're going to have sort of this split, two different looking things.
Well, we would theme it to look as close as we can. I mean, right now they're two different systems, right?
Yep.
There's the static HTML on the wiki, so it would just be static HTML on Sumo instead.
So it'll still have the same brand name.
Yeah.
And I was also wondering, I mean, where are these it's unclear to me what, who actually manages servers run both the official documentation as well as the community documentation.
Canonical.
Canonical,
Okay, so
IS runs them.
it's all in one, it's all seen as one thing for that, it's all two separate things.
No.
Well,
Yeah,
I see it, but-
wiki or help.ubuntu.com is the official documentation, and then it's just a /community.
Yeah, I understand that.
That
Yeah, I
ends
think
up
they've just
turning-
got like Apache overrides on
Yeah.
some of it.
And I'm not sure if it's two separate servers or not.
Yeah, I
It
don't know.
looks like one to us.
It shouldn't be, that shouldn't be a major change for IS.
Okay, but there, I have a strong feeling that there are a lot of knobs, whatever, on this solution. How would the community be able to, put those knobs? Right now we have a pretty simple wiki. It doesn't require any configurations. Now we have something that's a bit more advanced from what I see. So how do we manage that?
I think the threshold for learning Sumo is like the difference between wiki and forums. It's not that much more advanced than using Ubuntu forums in the features and
Talking about the sort of maintenance of the actual software.
of the actual software.
So we want to make a configuration change.
Um,
How does Sumo?
There shouldn't be much that needs to be changed once it's up and running. I know the Sumo devs are very active, and as long as we don't make too many changes, we'll be able to just keep updating as they put out new features and bug fixes and stuff.
And then I'm sorry for asking so many questions and not sitting in the fishbowl. But,
Change that.
I could move up there. Like the current wiki for the community documentation, they have tags that tell us this article needs to be reviewed, this article is out of date. How does Sumo handle that type of stuff where, hey, this documentation is from Hardy and we're on Precise?
I think you could use email notifications to notify moderators, so it could potentially go to the Ubuntu documentation mailing list.
Well, and I'm not even looking at that necessarily, but
Yeah.
I'm looking at, like, even those tags right now in the wiki are manually placed by people who
Yeah,
want to review
yeah.
the documentation. So it's like, it's Hardy, I don't understand the documentation, so I can mark it for review.
Yeah.
Because I don't know whether it's still accurate or not. It may or may not have changed. So really what I'm looking at is, does Sumo have any life cycle where we can say, hey, every 12 months if the article has not been updated, we're going to go ahead and mark it needs review, so someone doesn't have to manually go through and find the page.
They do track product and version number. So like when you go to report something, you can tell it, what version of Firefox it's
But-
for.
No life cycle on the documents themselves.
I'm not sure what you mean by.
Well, like with life cycle, if you produce a document in December and it's not updated a year from then, so next December, it would automatically, like in most life cycle things, that would archive. In our case, we wouldn't want to archive it, but we'd want to go ahead and say, hey, this needs to be reviewed. So instead of someone manually having to do it, the system is going ahead and saying, the last time this article was updated was a year ago, we need to have someone review it.
They
Well-
have dashboards for translations. I don't know if they have dashboards for that.
All right.
I can't imagine it would be that hard to add though.
Okay. I mean, I think for our documentation efforts, one of the problems that every community as it grows struggles with, and anybody who's been a sysadmin through Novell and Microsoft, when they started, documentation was great, you could find things. And as it got longer and longer and longer, you'd go there and you couldn't find an article that applied with common search terms. So, I'm concerned that we make sure that we keep ourselves up to date and having something automated as opposed to manually trying to go through pages that we may or may not even know exist. I mean, that's going to be important to automate that kind of thing.
Right. It'll all be in the database, so all the data that you would need to do this would be there.
All right.
So it's just a matter of putting it on a screen somewhere.
Cool. What's the database backend?
It's Django and MySQL.
All right.
So you keep mentioning, Ben, you keep mentioning, the doc team and the moderators and all these people. I don't know who these people are or if we have these people because it seems
We
like,
don't.
Yeah,
So
and
so
that's-
Matthew East is the team lead for the
He
documentation
didn't even
team.
know this was happening.
Yep.
We talked to
He's-
Matthew about it.
Yeah, but
Send
there's
us the list saying, when was this decided?
Nothing's
no-
decided yet. This is
so
all
like
just,
Germany-
will this work? Will this make it better?
Yeah, there was an email. There was an email a while ago that you guys sent to the mailing list. Even
Yeah,
with the report
there's
that
been
you-
communication. It's more inactivity of the team lead for documentation, and there's really only 2 or 3 people that are contributing to the team, and it's very part-time.
Part of the problem is that I was using our experimental cloud to try it out, and like 48 hours after I would send out an email saying they can test it, it would go away. And I'd have to put it back and it'd go away.
That was a bitter lesson learned.
Yes.
No.
Can understand.
I mean, I'm concerned, because you said like, you know, if someone marks something out of date, an email will go to
Right.
the admins, but, or the mailing list, but, I mean, it's not like, even now, when someone marks something as to be updated, it doesn't get updated as soon as someone notices. It gets updated eventually, so
Yeah.
posting something to the mailing list, it's not like someone's gonna jump on it immediately and fix it.
No, there's not going to be an immediate fix, and I mean, still, as it is right now, a lot of the community documentation is outdated, you know.
Yeah, but
I mean,
right
Kitchen
now-
just got updated.
Right, but right now you can go to a wiki page, see that
Yeah.
it's outdated, and if you know how to fix it, you can fix it.
Yeah.
If an email is not, I mean, if it's not being marked in some way on the page, if
Yeah.
an email's just going to some mailing list I've never seen, you know, 3 years ago, there's no way to indicator.
Right. I know that either they already have support for tags or they were working on it last I talked to them. So that we would be able to add, you know, custom tags for specific things like that.
And then moderation, you were mentioning, like whether people can just submit articles and let them hang out there.
It's kind of
or-
weird talking to him between the courts.
Um,
Yeah, so moderation right now is really based just around language teams.
Okay.
So I had asked him, you know, can we have like a set of kernel documentation moderators? And no, we can't. Not yet. It's on their radar. We don't really have a time frame of when that'll be.
Okay.
But right now, you can say any new Spanish translations have to be approved by somebody on this team. And
So that's just for, like, in English, then people can just toss up articles like they do on the wiki. Does that need?
do they have to go through it for English too? They might.
See, and
I think they have to go through the translations, the little panel system, and have the right privileges either way.
Yeah.
See, and I'm concerned with that kind of control, because to me, one of the beauties of the wiki is people can go ahead and do it as a community without this need for approval.
Right.
And while we're trying to get people more interested in doing that, I'd be concerned that people can't just get involved, that they would get frustrated that, hey, wow, I made this suggestion 4 weeks ago and no one's approved it.
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens with the official documentation, right? Because people don't understand the tools and it's very hard to do. So people end up duplicating some of the official stuff on /community because they don't know how to update the official docs. And there's
So the way the moderator teams work, they're just Django groups, and we can map Django group membership to Launchpad team membership. So
Could you map it to Launchpad membership period? As in you have an account, you're in the group? I mean, that's the way our current wiki is. You have a Launchpad account,
yeah,
you can edit.
maybe you could make an open group that anybody can join too.
Yeah. It seems like it'd be interesting to have.
Is the Ubuntu Docs team, is that an open team? Like, can anybody join, or is it?
We have a few, so we have like a few different,
Mhm.
but yeah, there's the main contributors group, anybody can join, but there's some that are moderated groups.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between, like, if you're on the docs team, like I'm on the part of the docs team, I'm not sure which level I'm at.
Yeah.
I know that I can't go and on /community rename a page. but
Yeah,
I
so
can-
that's wiki administrators, which
Right.
is part of it's like a subgroup of the doc team.
But I mean, I can go create a page,
Yeah.
I can edit the page, and I didn't have to be a part of the doc team. I mean, part of the process of getting on the
Yeah.
doc team was going ahead and saying, here's the wiki pages that I've updated, here's the documentation, and people looked at it and said, oh, okay, you're moved up a peg, or
Right.
Yeah.
you were able to be on the team. And I would like some way of going ahead and having feedback that this article has been viewed by people and found helpful versus viewed by people and found out of date or poor. You know, almost like Ask Ubuntu, where people can say, hey, this helped me. You know, that would be useful, but I really don't want to lock down something into a bureaucratic process to get things approved and in. I understand the concern for language, but you know, even then, I don't want to discourage people just because they're speaking Spanish and they want to write it. I mean, what if someone wants to write it native in Spanish and it needs to be translated?
Yeah,
over?
they have that right here.
You know,
Right here, they have the,
Oh, is this document helpful?
yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know what it does if you say no. Well, I think it allows you to provide feedback on why it's not.
Okay.
So.
Sorry, I was some stuff.
We're really just going over what it can and can't do and what they'd like it to do.
It's real time, is it? I mean, it's the current solution.
Yeah, and there's the current solution,
Well, there's
write our own, but that would
There's
be a
also, you
lot
can,
of effort.
I mean, if the decision was not to go with Sumo, there is also the possibility of just upgrading Moin, because I believe the Moin we're running right now is outdated
Mhm.
by a few versions, and also adding modules to make it more functional and have more features.
Mhm.
But there's not a great amount of development as far as the modules.
Right. Yeah, the Sumo developers are
Yeah, really
very,
active.
they're a great group of guys. You can jump in their channel and get help. You can offer,
And Mozilla is like funding Sumo hack events
Yeah.
like around the globe
yeah,
constantly.
and they were really excited about the idea of us using it and being involved. So I think if, you know, we come to them and say, hey, we need this feature, here's the code for it, that they'll accept it. And even if we don't have the code, that it would get on their list of things to try and get in.
all right. I mean, I definitely see that we need to improve what we have. Definitely as the community grows, things like it was helpful being able to search a little bit easier and actually have a search feature built into it. 'Cause, I mean, the current wiki, you basically, what, pray, did you find the right thing?
Yeah.
So I think those things are important.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure we don't discourage people from going ahead and getting involved and contributing. I want this to, you know, make it easier
Yeah.
and grow that contribution and not turn people away.
Right, so anybody can contribute. Anybody with a launchpad or with an SSO login can make a contribution,
Yeah.
and it'll just go through the moderator process. So we would just need some level of attention to things coming in like that.
And I would just say if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that we're built to scale it out. You know, I don't want to see something like a multiple day or even week turnaround on improving articles.
Right.
You know, if it was an alternative of no moderation or go ahead and have just it's not helpful and that flags somebody to come and look at it, I'd rather have no moderation in that versus it takes 4 weeks for something to get in.
If we can't already do that, we should be able to make a change to allow it and submit that upstream. And I don't see why they wouldn't take it as long as it's configurable.
So then to go into it, we got something in there to ask another question. Then, when we're doing the transition, what would be the plan, if any, to try to absorb the current content and migrate it? And then, what would the transition look like? Would we put this up as in like a testing mode where people could try it out and get
Yeah, so
feedback?
we would put it up as testing. Once we were satisfied with it, we'll start with a clean copy of the database and start working on migration of what's in the current wiki.
I think the idea was to, if we were going to move forward, to do testing with Doc Team first,
Yes.
then maybe the design process to have the branding done, and then migration of the content, check for stability, and then do the actual swap to production.
Yeah.
Now, would there be any public beta? So it's not.
That would be
mostly
something that would be
live
interesting, yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause I mean, I also see this as potentially, because it's a change, it's providing some excitement for some people to get involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like whenever we change it, some people come out of the woodwork with objections, and there's excitement, sometimes negative and sometimes positive, but let's leverage that
Yeah.
excitement.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be public right from the start.
And I mean, we could, if there was any patches that were done in our community, we could also forward those upstream in case they wanted to include them in their
Yeah,
repo.
I would very much like to make sure that we're working closely with upstream so
Yeah.
that we don't have a big delta between us and them.
Yeah.
And then I guess the the last question I have is there still a concern that 4 years from now we'll be on this same version of Sumo, like we're several versions behind
I
from
don't
1.0?
think so.
So this would be more maintainable by IS?
Yeah, and
Well, the issue is, I believe, that if you were to prepare one to be done, it could get upgraded. But relying on IS to do it is where the breakdown is.
we would have to provide IS with the way to do it, just like we have for Summit and Local Team Portal.
Okay.
And because it is Django, they're already familiar with it.
Sure.
And like I said, there's a lot of development activity going on in this on the Mozilla side.
Yep.
So I don't think that we're gonna have like code stagnation anytime soon.
So trying to put down some things that we can do you have a timeline that you'd be putting up a beta?
Yeah, I could put up on EC2 so that it hopefully won't go away. And then, so we could do that for the initial evaluation.
All right.
And in the meantime, I'll get an ETA from IS on when we can get an actual server provisioned to run it.
All right. And then, is there any desire on your side to have people that are currently familiar with documentation on the wiki to mark articles that we shouldn't migrate so you don't spend time doing that? Because I'm assuming that there's some old stuff out there that would really need a whole rewrite versus being taken over.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we can safely do that?
I think if you have the right people on the documentation team go and look at some of the stuff that's already tagged, needing review, I think we could do that. I mean, if you find something that's from Hardy, do you really want to suck that into
Yeah.
Sumo?
If you can provide us with a list of articles, then it would be easy enough to just use
There's,
that as a blacklist.
All right, because I mean, the tag system should work if we can, and again, I don't know what goes into a tag, but if we make a new tag, like
Yeah.
do not import,
Yeah.
maybe we can do that, tag the articles.
Okay.
I know that, so one thing I would like to see the cycle either way to help with all of this is just to call for help for the documentation team, because there's really not much extra time for people that are contributing right now, aside from just system documentation. The team just relies on community members to, you know, be self-starters and update content on the wiki and try to get in touch with Jeremy or Matthew and if they need any help or guidance on that. But I mean, even our to-do lists are severely outdated. There's just, between projects and IRL, not much and not enough manpower at all.
Well, that's sort of why I'm concerned about moderation.
Yeah.
We're adding a whole,
Another layer of
which no one
a
has
barrier,
time to work on.
a potential barrier, yeah.
I mean, it's also, I emailed the list, like a week and a half ago to ask a question. It still hasn't been answered. It turned into the thread about Sumo, and I still don't know whether I should update this doc or just for
so
Lucid. And so I mean,
until we're
there's-
done with the initial testing and decide that yes, this can work, I would say nobody should block on working on the current wiki.
But her question was whether, so with documentation, whether to update the existing content on the community side or to split it into two articles.
Yeah,
One for
I mean, I don't care how it goes. I
the
don't
way
really
I've seen it work is with community wiki content is just updating the article and not bothering archiving it, just bringing it up to the latest stable release, whatever the instructions are. I honestly don't think you're going to get a 100% green light from team lead or anything like that.
Well, no, I was just looking for
Yeah.
direction. I didn't.
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't wanna-
that's
I mean, I
the
didn't
kind of
wanna,
the
like,
standard. If there's
replace all the screenshots on the page. I mean, it was an important page that's linked from a lot of prominent places, so I didn't want to just go in and, delete all the Lucid stuff without asking someone.
Yeah.
I mean, there are volunteers out there. I think people have run into blockers like I have, where we're not sure if we're supposed to update it or who's supposed to. It's just,
Yeah.
so maybe a call out, like you're saying,
Yeah.
that has more. It encourages people to contribute because it's been sort of unclear or scary, or we're not really sure if we're supposed to do something.
I think it's a great thing for if we could get some guidance or you know, maybe improve the getting started with doc team, and then use that as something that new contributors can start with, because it's definitely one of the teams that needs help right now.
Yeah.
I know that at our release party, the person who did our banner, he's like, oh, I don't know how to get involved. And I was like, just shoot me an email and we'll get you started this cycle. And he's like, yeah, I totally want to help out with documentation. So if more locals can get more people, maybe the team will grow.
Yeah.
And yeah.
How do you manage the translation?
Translations.
In Sumo, I haven't looked at it.
Question. So community documentation and official documentation. When I first started to get involved in documentation, I saw sometimes you often have overlap. And how do we look at that? I mean, it seems to me when the community documentation reaches a certain, I don't know, state of quality, we should put it into the official documentation, or having sort of two is it's confusing, I think, for you. I'm not sure what we're looking at. You know, so is there any way to improve that?
I agree. I think if nothing else, it needs to be more well defined as to what is what.
Yeah. So that would be a question for Jeremy, as far as, so for desktop, Jeremy handles system documentation. They have some just guidelines as to what he accepts. It's more just kind of, you're going to submit your commit for whatever, or you're going to, you know, do a push for whatever documentation you want to contribute to system doc, and if it meets the quality, whatever quality control he has, you know, he's going to provide feedback and let you know. I don't think there's too much structured guidelines right now as to whether we can import and use stuff from community side in the system doc, but
It seems to me there should be some kind of sub-process where, you know, task force, okay, let's focus on this page, let's clean it up, let's make it nice, the purpose or the intention of putting it into
right into the system doc. I know that a lot of stuff comes from upstream, so some of the stuff comes from GNOME. Is just a lot of the documentation does.
I mean, one of the
90%
things
of it.
Yeah, like so 90% of it is just stuff that's synced down and like, you know, forked over and brought down and just reused in Ubuntu. So
on the community side of the system docs, it's more of a basic overview because it actually ships, so it's offline for offline usage for people that don't. We cover enough of the basics and enough to walk through to help people get started before if they don't have a connection online or anything else. That's what we try to keep it as small as possible to ship all the translations with as well.
yeah,
Because it does take up space on the CD, it does take up space in the install.
yeah.
I'd like to actually say, I think this gentleman here, both of you, but you made a good point. The question is focusing on user-submitted content that isn't submitted, you know, through the normal Ubuntu docs, system docs
Yeah.
pathway, which is tightly controlled, right?
Yep.
So there's that, and then there's Wiki.
Yep.
And the Wiki is sort of everything. But the question is there on the Wiki a way to like have an editorial review board or something where the really great Wiki articles could be reviewed, cleaned up, and promoted, not to system docs per se, but within the Wiki itself. Like, these are the ones that are known good, and then anybody can obviously submit other articles. That's kind of what, if you go to Google Docs, for example, you can see something like that. In Google Docs, you see there are official articles that are up there, and users can submit articles as well. And I would think that like the official articles that are really good, and then user submitted articles could be reviewed, and if they get good enough, they could be promoted to the official articles.
Isn't
Some
that how it
system
happens
like
with
that, I
Word
think, would make a lot of sense. That way, people would know
There's not-
when they go right up there to the wiki or wherever, they would know, hey, these are the ones that have been reviewed. We know these are accurate. We know this one's good for precise. This one's
Yeah.
better. But then there are other ones,
There's-
low barrier of entry.
We don't have, I don't think the Moin has that capability right now, but that's kind of almost like a Wikipedia type thing where, so like editor reviewed content can have certain markup to show that it's more authentic, and you can, yeah, there's featured articles, and then there's also, when you're looking at certain articles, there's a way to determine whether the author, you know, it's either going to be flagged as it needs more work, you know, needs references and stuff like that. But it would be unique to see something like that where an article could have a badge or something that shows that it's got a level of authenticity.
It would also be interesting to know what this article was helpful to me would do. Maybe there's a way to like crowdsource the goodness of the article.
Yeah, and then it
Just like
eventually
using
gets
Yeah, like
some
it-
kind of
I
a
mean,
little,
it wouldn't really work for things that hardly anyone uses. It would work, but it might be
Yeah.
a mechanism that it wouldn't require like formal review by.
that's like, it's a really so crowdsourcing, almost this article was helpful to kind of give it more points so that it would become featured, and also maybe have some kind of badge or something to show that it's,
I mean, if it all just started MySQL, you could just yank it out. Right,
That comes with Sumo though, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if we were to go to Sumo, yeah, we,
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause you have the ability to say yes, it was helpful, and I assume.
yeah, but, and then have that, yes,
Have
this was
that
helpful.
Translated to a ranking.
Yeah,
So
to-
the top ranked docs would be able to be promoted somewhere.
Yeah, like maybe
Most
rotated
helpful.
on the front or prominently ranked.
Probably do it. So the front page, if I remember right, is not really tightly integrated with the rest of the system.
Yeah,
So we can do whatever we wanted
yeah.
on there.
And then also maybe if after a certain amount of, yes, this was helpful, it could have some kind of rubber stamp on the article itself showing that, you know, this is a community approved or
Yeah.
community authenticated article, you know.
Maybe we could do that with tags.
Yeah, with a, yeah, just with a tag after a certain
Yeah,
amount of
that's-
likes, it would.
For a given
Yeah,
release.
for a given release, and that's the other thing with life cycle.
Uh-huh.
It is, okay, it was helpful for Hardy, precise.
Yeah, I'd,
No,
I'd also like to see tagging for each versions, and then maybe we could archive them while they're still, and then until their end of life, and then after end of life, they can be perched, or I don't
I mean,
know.
the problem that I
Like I
see
said,
is,
I mean, you saw when you were doing yours that it asked for Firefox version. So we can ask for Ubuntu version and then
Yeah,
just pull lists of articles based on that. Do comparison. We can say, okay, we've got this article for 1204, but we don't have a corresponding one for 1210. Can we just
Well, the
copy it
question is-
over, or is it obsolete, or what?
but the question is did it change? Because I mean, some documentation doesn't change every version, like the UFW
Yeah.
documentation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes a lot of that documentation moves forward, and it'll be there until we make major changes, and it's still valuable. Whereas, you know, for those of us that were first into this when you had to manually install NVIDIA drivers before Albert Malone came along and made his tool, and then Ubuntu decided to do additional drivers, you know, that documentation changed rapidly over a period of 2 years.
Yeah.
and made that
so did you
transition.
see this wiki link that he put up?
I skimmed over it. I wasn't sure.
And it was talking about Sumo as well.
Was it?
Yeah, it was talking about a bunch of different frameworks to actually transition, it looks like, wiki into
Oh, okay.
a more robust system, so what
Yeah,
we're trying,
I'll read the rest of it when I've got some more time.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can add a question when you got a new release. You got a new release and the old stuff, the stuff that's still tagged with the older release, you can still ask a question at the bottom and says, hey, does it work for sizes? Does it
Yeah,
work
you
for
should be able to do that.
or
Right?
something?
Something like a batch, a pictogram, a small pictogram that says prohibited sign means this article is no longer valid because this version has reached the end of
Yeah,
life.
we can even just have a tag that says that, and then you can go through and say, okay, well, these are all the ones that are marked as being old
Right.
and need to be updated. And you can see what version they were written for, and then just see what needs to be changed to get
Yeah,
into the latest.
now when you say that, that brings to mind, can you actually have an article tagged as, you know, 1204 valid, 1210 valid, 1304
See, why
valid?
not?
See, because I mean, like when I go to support forums, oftentimes I'll see this is the version this is valid for, and you'll see 3 versions listed, and then another article it'll only be 1.
Yeah, if that's not already built in to allow us to do more than one of that, then yeah, we should be able to do it with tags.
So I mean, I'm excited to see the test up and running and get to play with it, because to me there's a lot of value in us having a conversation and declaring, you know, these are some important things, but then there's also going to be that, let's actually poke at it, prod at it, and
Let's try to break
stretch
it
it.
so we know how to fix it.
Seems like we should have a charm,
We should have it charmed.
right?
I asked George to look at it, and because they really pull everything from GitHub,
Yeah.
it was not going to be an easy charm to do. So
My
Part
subway
of-
charm uses pulls source from GitHub.
hmm?
My subway charm pulls all the source from GitHub.
Does it?
Yeah. As a matter of
Does
fact,
it
it
have,
pulls
like,
multiple because
Well, would you
Ubuntu
like
didn't
to
have the
charm
right
this?
versions, huh?
Would you like to charm this?
I don't know.
I'll help
Maybe.
you. I mean,
Okay, yeah. I don't
thanks
know
to Canonical
Django
Stack,
too
I
well.
have
That's
plenty of experience installing it.
okay. Yeah.
Just remember, you can win your laptop.
Well, that would be good because that'll make deployment easy for IS.
If I already said that if I win the laptop, I'm gonna give this to part of us. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Your vCrens on Launchpad, right?
Yep. Everywhere.
How many minutes do we have left?
Not Beak Hero though. He works at Mozilla. He hacks on Sumo.
But we got Nigel over there now too, so maybe we could rope him into doing some work for us again.
Oh. He's working at Mozilla now?
Yeah.
Is he still
or
in-
soon to be one of the two? I'm not sure.
Do they have an
if he's
office
starting.
in India?
No, he's moving to New Zealand to work for them.
Half the Mozilla people in Portland are always traveling anyways. They're like in Thailand.
Yeah.
I think one's going down to Cuba for 3 or 4 months to.
Oh, hey, Dacre signed up for a work item. Thank you, Dacre. One less thing for me. Okay, Charles, can I put you down for this? Determine feasibility to review current documentation to mark as do not import?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm gonna have to work with the documentation team and some others just to see if we can do it, but I think it's feasible.
Yeah. And there's no rush on that. I mean, you can do that.
Benjamin, you know how hard it is to get a new tag?
No, I don't.
What?
To get a new tag, I'll have to ask Matthew East how hard it is to get a new tag.
Okay.
I know there were, I mean, that's the first step, we gotta have a tag. Because just because it's marked gold, I don't necessarily wanna do it. I want everybody to take a look at the stuff that's marked for review.
Yeah.
And then specifically apply a tag saying do not, because otherwise we might miss articles.
Right.
Yeah.
So,